Namaskar students. Hope you are hale and hearty, taking care of your health and your studies. My name is Jyotsna and I am from Education Department, Chandigarh. In our earlier chapters, we have learned how the government, if they ever make any law which is against the rights of citizens can directly knock the door of Supreme Court, especially in the case of fundamental rights. What actually happens if there is any dispute between two states? We have also learnt about it that center intervenes on many issues. For example, water, the rivers, all that comes under the jurisdiction of central government. If there is any rule which is made due to which a particular group gets affected, what happens? Those groups agitate. Sometimes there are many litigations which lead to farmers getting agitated. There are many rules which change the industrial setup and the industries and their labor. They agitate against the policies. What are all these? So that is our topic of discussion today from grade 10 book Democratic Politics Part 2, chapter number 5, Popular Struggles and Movements. So let's get going. In the earlier chapter, we have learnt why power sharing is important in a democracy and how different tiers of government and various social groups share power. In this chapter, we will know how leaders in power balance the conflicting demands and pressures that exist in democracy. The chapter mainly deals with indirect ways of influencing politics through pressure groups and movements. Let's first take up popular struggles in Nepal and Bolivia. In chapter 1 of class 9 political science, you have studied the story of the triumph of democracy in Poland. The story reminds us of the role of people in making Poland a democratic country. Here are two more stories through which we will get to know how power is exercised in a democracy. First of all, let's take up the movement for democracy in Nepal. Nepal witnessed a popular movement in April 2006, which was aimed at regaining popular control over the government from the king. All the major political parties in the parliament formed a 7-party alliance, which was known as SPA, and called for a 4-day strike in Kathmandu. Their demands included restoration of parliament, power to an all-party government, a new constituent assembly. On 24th April 2006, the king was forced to accept all the 3 demands. In 2008, the kingship was abolished and Nepal became a federal democratic republic. In 2015, it adopted a new constitution. The struggle of the Nepali people is a source of inspiration to democrats all over the world. From Nepal, let's move our focus to Bolivia. Democratic politics, Bolivia's water war. People's successful struggle against the privatization of water in Bolivia shows that struggles are necessary for the working of democracy. Democracy and popular struggles. The stories of Nepal and Bolivia were different from each other. The movement in Nepal was to establish democracy, while the struggle in Bolivia involved claims on an elected democratic government. Both these struggles show their impact at different levels. Despite these differences, both instances involved critical role of political organizations. Here are some points which demonstrate how democracy has evolved all over the world. First and foremost, democracy evolves through popular struggles. Then, democratic conflict is resolved through mass mobilization. Sometimes conflict is resolved by using the existing institutions like the parliament or the judiciary. The conflicts and mobilizations are based on new political organizations, which include political parties, pressure groups, and movement groups. Let's first take up the mobilization and organizations. In a democracy, Different kinds of organizations work behind any big struggle. These organizations play their role in two ways: direct participation in competitive politics, which is done by creating parties, contesting elections, and forming governments. However, every citizen does not participate so directly other than through voting. Second, there are many indirect ways in which people can get governments to listen to their demands or their points of view. This is done by forming an organization and undertaking activities to promote the interest or viewpoints of people. Such groups are known as interest groups or pressure groups. Now let's take up pressure groups and movements. The term pressure group originated from the USA. Pressure groups means a group of people who are organized for actively promoting and defending their common interests. They are a vital link between the government and the governed, and they keep governments more responsive to the wishes of the community, especially in between elections. So let's find out what are pressure groups. It is a common interest group that tries to secure their interest by influencing the formulation and administration of public policy. They are referred to as civil society organizations, easily known as CSOs. So, what is the role of these pressure groups? The role of pressure group is indirect, ordinarily invisible and intermittent, yet a very important part of the administrative system. The emergence of trust and monopolies and the struggle over tariffs led to the formation of these. It is a living public behind the parties. These groups' roles are as vital as that of a political party existing in any country. Pressure groups in India. In India, political parties and pressure groups together play a big role in the struggle of power. In India, the pressure groups arose even during the colonial period. All Indian Trade Union Congress was the first country-wide pressure group of the working class. India was a developing country having a scarcity of resources and acute poverty, resulting in the significant role of the pressure groups. The aim of pressure group was to secure economic and political concessions for themselves, providing crucial components of the structural equilibrium, that is, maintenance function. So, what is the role of pressure group in India? The capacity of these groups is determined by leadership, organizational abilities, mass media, economic power, and mobilization techniques. Besides this, they use lobbying methods, strike, bandh, demonstration, funding political parties, party platforms, etc. Even though the role of pressure group is indirect, it facilitates many vital activities in administration. So let's shift our attention from pressure group to a movement. A movement attempts to influence politics rather than directly taking part in electoral competition. It's a small organization which depends on spontaneous mass participation of people than an interest group like Narmada Bachao Andolan, movement for right to information, anti-liquor movement or women's movement or environmental movement. So, sectional interest groups and public interest groups. So, how do pressure groups and movements influence politics? They exert influence on politics in variety of ways. First and foremost, they try to gain public support and sympathy for their goals and their activities by carrying out information campaigns, organizing meetings, filing petitions, etc. Then they often organize protest activities like strike or disrupting government programs. Last but not the least, some persons from pressure groups or movement groups may participate in official bodies and committees that offer advice to the government. So, what is the relationship between political parties and pressure groups and how it can take different forms? Some direct and indirect ways are: in some cases, the pressure groups are either formed or led by the leaders of political parties or act as extended arms of political parties. For example, most trade unions and student organizations in India are either established by or affiliated to one or the major political parties. Second, sometimes political parties grow out of movements. For example, when the Assam movement led by students against the foreigners came to an end, it led to the formation of Assam Gan Parishad. Same can be the case of Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi. In most cases, the relationship between parties and interest or movement group is not so direct. In this case also, the dialogue and negotiation take place as most of the new leaders of political parties come from interest or movement groups. So is pressure group and movements influence healthy? So let's see. Pressure groups and movements have strengthened democracy. Governments can often come under undue pressure from a small group of rich and powerful people. Public interest group and movements perform a useful role in counting their undue influence and reminding the government of the needs and concerns of ordinary citizens. Sectional interest groups also play a valuable role where different group functions actively. No one single group can achieve dominance over society. Thus, the government gets to hear about what different sections of the population want. With this, we come to the end of this lesson. Hope today's session was fruitful for you. So, before wasting any time, let's try to recapitulate what we have learned. Let's take up the focal points we have taken up today. First and foremost, we talked about popular struggles in Nepal and Bolivia. While talking about Nepal, we discussed how the popular movement began in April 2006, how the Seven Party Alliance or SPA was constituted, and on how 4-day strike in Kathmandu took place. On 21st of April, how 5 lakh people gathered and gave an ultimatum to the king. On 24th April 2004, the last day of ultimatum, the king was forced to concede all the 3 demands. The SPA chose Girija Prasad Koirala as the new Prime Minister of interim government. The struggle came to be known as Nepal's second movement for democracy. Then we talked about mobilization and organizations. How the protest against water privatization in Bolivia was not led by any political party. It was led by an organization called FEDICO. The organization comprised of local professionals including engineers and environmentalists. The movement was supported by the Socialist Party in 2006. This party came to power in Bolivia. From both these examples, we can see that in a democracy, several different kinds of organizations work behind any big struggle. From here, we talked about pressure groups and the movements. Pressure groups, the organizations that attempt to influence government policies. These organizations are formed when people with common occupation, interest, aspiration, or opinions come together in order to achieve a common objective. And how these sectional interest groups and public interest groups come to the forefront for the policy making. We also talked about movement groups, especially the movement which started with the specific issues of people displaced by the creation of Sardar Sarovar Dam or Narmada River. Its objective was to stop the dam from being constructed. These single issue movements can be contrasted with movements that are long term and involve more than one issue. pressure groups and movements exert influence on politics in various ways. So, then in the end we discussed, is this influence by pressure groups healthy? Under this we discussed that it may initially appear that it is not healthy for groups that promote the interest of a particular section, especially in a democratic setup. But it may seem that these groups will power without responsibility. Pressure groups and movements may not get their funds and support from the people. Putting pressure group on rulers is not unhealthy. Public interest groups and movements perform a useful role in countering this useful role or countering this undue influence and reminding the government of the needs and concerns of ordinary citizens. On your screens, you can see a question, followed by it are 4 options. Let's see which is the correct option. So, my first question to you is, the word MNC is related to which issue? Nepal's popular struggle, Bolivia's water war, environmental movement, or Narmada Bachao Andolan? Yes, it is related to Bolivia water war, where the water as a resource was to be made privatized. Which one of the following is the third wave country that had won democracy in 1990? Bolivia, Belgium, Bangladesh, or Nepal? It is Nepal. So, which pressure group seeks to promote collective good? Sectional interest, public interest group, movement group, or loose organization? Yes, it is public interest group. Alright, in which 2 ways the public interest group achieve their aims? They organize meetings to win the public support. They raise slogans against the government and disrupt public. They try to influence the media by drawing their attention to their cause. They set up the public property on fire. New sessions, new information. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep studying. Namaskar.